June 6, 1944. 156,000 Allied soldiers are about to storm the beaches of Normandy in the largest amphibious invasion in human history. But in a bunker deep beneath Berlin, a German intelligence officer named Reinhard Gehlen is staring at a map, and he's smiling. Because he knows something the Allies don't. He knows their entire plan, he knows where they're landing, he knows when they're coming. And he has a counter-operation so devastating, so perfectly designed, that if Hitler had just listened to him, D-Day would have become the greatest military massacre of all time, and the Nazis might have won World War II. This is the story of Operation Conspiration, the secret Nazi plan that history forgot. The plan that came within a hair's breadth of changing everything, and the 3 reasons it failed. Act 1, the Deception War, 1 hour. To understand how close we came to disaster, you need to understand the greatest con job in military history. It's 1943. The Allies know they have to invade Western Europe if they want to defeat Hitler. But there's a problem. The entire Nazi war machine is waiting for them. Hitler has something called the Atlantic Wall, thousands of miles of fortifications, bunkers, machine gun nests, and mines stretching from Norway to Spain. And he has 50 divisions ready to crush any invasion force the moment they hit the beach. So the Allies come up with a plan. Not just an invasion plan, a deception plan. It's called Operation Fortitude, and it's absolutely genius. The real invasion will happen at Normandy, but the Allies will make Hitler think it's coming at Calais, 150 miles northeast. Calais is the obvious choice. Distance across the English Channel. It's the most direct route to Germany. Any reasonable military commander would invade there. So the Allies build an entire fake army. I'm not talking about a few decoys. I'm talking about a phantom force of over 1 million men. They call it the 1st United States Army Group, FUSAG. They build thousands of inflatable tanks, rubber aircraft, plywood landing craft. They create fake radio chatter, fake supply depots, fake headquarters. They even put General George Patton in command, because they know Hitler thinks Patton is the Allies' best general. If Patton's at Calais, Hitler will believe the main invasion is at Calais. And it works. German reconnaissance flights photograph the fake army. German radio operators intercept the fake transmissions. Hitler's intelligence network reports back. The invasion will be at Calais. We're certain. Hitler buys it completely. He positions his strongest panzer divisions near Calais, not Normandy. And on June 6, 1944, when the Allies storm the beaches of Normandy, Hitler is so convinced Normandy is just a diversion that he refuses to send reinforcements. He keeps his panzers at Calais, waiting for the real invasion. By the time he realizes he's been fooled, it's too late. The Allies have their foothold. D-Day succeeds. Operation Fortitude is remembered as one of the greatest deceptions in military history. It saved tens of thousands of Allied lives. It changed the course of the war. But here's what almost no one knows. The Nazis had a counter-plan. And if it had worked, Operation Fortitude would have become the Allies' greatest mistake. His name was Reinhard Gehlen. If you've never heard of him, there's a reason. Gehlen was a ghost, one of the most brilliant and terrifying intelligence officers in Nazi Germany. He ran Fremde Heere Ost, Foreign Armies East, the division responsible for intelligence on the Soviet Union. But by 1943, Gehlen was also tracking Allied movements in the West, and he was watching Operation Fortitude unfold with a mixture of admiration and horror. Admiration because it was masterfully executed, horror because he could see his own commanders falling for it. Gehlen was no fool. He knew the Allies were planning something big. He knew they were running a deception operation. He could see the pieces moving. But here's the thing about deception. Once you know your enemy is deceiving you, you can deceive them back. And that's exactly what Gehlen proposed. In February 1944, 4 months before D-Day, Gehlen presented a plan to the German High Command. It was called Unternehmen Konspiration, Operation Conspiracy. The premise was simple, brutal, and absolutely brilliant. Don't try to figure out where the Allies are really invading. Instead, make them think their deception is working perfectly, and then turn it against them. Here's how it would work. Galen knew the Allies were trying to convince Hitler the invasion would be at Calais. Let them think it's working. German intelligence would accidentally leak information confirming that Hitler believed Calais was the target. They'd stage fake troop movements away from Normandy. They'd intercept the fake FUSAG radio transmissions and respond as if they were real. They'd make the Allies think they'd achieved perfect deception. The Allies would commit everything to Normandy, confident that Hitler had fallen for the bait. But here's the trap. Instead of concentrating forces at Calais, Galen proposed hiding Germany's most elite panzer divisions just inland from Normandy, out of sight from Allied reconnaissance, but close enough to strike within hours of the invasion. Not on the beaches. That would be too obvious. Rommel wanted beach defenses, but Galen knew that would reveal German awareness of Normandy. No, the panzers would wait just behind the hedgerows, in the Bocage countryside, hidden in the forests and small villages, invisible from the sea. And then, once the first wave of Allied troops hit the beaches, once they were committed, once their ships were unloading, once they thought they'd achieved surprise, the trap would snap shut. Thousands of German tanks would roll out of the countryside. Artillery would rain down. The Allies would be caught in the open, their backs to the sea, with nowhere to run. The beaches would turn into killing fields. Galen estimated that if executed correctly, Operation Conspiration would destroy 60 to 70% of the initial invasion force within the first 24 hours. The psychological impact would be catastrophic. The Allies would lose faith in their intelligence. Their generals would be disgraced. Churchill and Roosevelt would face political collapse. And Hitler, for the first time in years, would be back on the offensive. It was the perfect counter-deception, and it almost happened. So why didn't it work? If Galen's plan was so brilliant, why did D-Day succeed? The answer comes down to 3 reasons, 3 tiny cracks in the Nazi war machine that saved the world. By 1944, Adolf Hitler trusted no one, not his generals, not his intelligence officers, not even his own instincts. Years of betrayals, assassination attempts, and military setbacks had turned Hitler into a paranoid dictator who second-guessed everything. He'd been burned before by intelligence reports. He'd been deceived by the Soviets. He'd watched his officers fail him again and again. So when Galen presented Operation Conspiration, Hitler's response was predictable. How do I know the Allies aren't feeding us false information? How do I know this isn't exactly what they want us to think? It's the intelligence paradox. Once you know deception is in play, you start doubting everything, even the truth. Galen argued passionately. He showed Hitler the reconnaissance photos. He presented intercepted communications. He explained the logic of the Allied strategy. But Hitler wouldn't commit. He hedged. He split the difference. He kept some forces at Calais, put some at Normandy, scattered others along the coast. He turned a focused trap into a diluted defense. And here's the tragic irony. Hitler's paranoia saved the Allies. If he'd been just slightly more trusting, if he'd believed in Galen's plan the way he believed in the Blitzkrieg or the invasion of France, history would be unrecognizable. Erwin Rommel, the legendary Desert Fox, was in charge of defending the Atlantic Wall. And he hated Galen's plan. Rommel believed in one thing: meet the enemy at the waterline. Hit them on the beaches before they can establish a foothold. Destroy them while they're vulnerable, while they're climbing out of landing craft, while they're wading through surf. Galen's plan required pulling forces back from the coast, hiding them inland, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. To Rommel, this was insane. The first 24 hours of the invasion will be decisive, he said. For the Allies, as well as Germany, it will be the longest day. Rommel wanted mines, obstacles, bunkers, machine guns, everything on the beaches. He wanted the invasion stopped before it started. The 2 men argued for months. Hitler characteristically refused to choose between them. He let both approaches happen simultaneously, which meant neither was fully implemented. The beach defenses were incomplete. The inland panzer reserves were poorly positioned. The trap was half set, and when D-Day came, the Germans were caught in between strategies, neither fully defensive nor fully offensive. In April 1944, just 2 months before D-Day, Allied commandos raided a German position near Normandy. They captured a mid-level officer named Major Werner Pluskat. Pluskat wasn't important. He wasn't high-ranking. He didn't know about Operation Conspiration, but he had something valuable: detailed maps of the beach defenses at Normandy. Under interrogation, Pluskat revealed something crucial. The German defenses at Normandy were weaker than expected. The fortifications were incomplete. Rommel's Atlantic Wall had gaps. This intelligence reached Eisenhower just weeks before the invasion, and it changed everything. The Allies realized that Normandy wasn't as heavily defended as they'd feared. The Germans weren't concentrating forces there. The deception was working, maybe too well. Allied commanders began to suspect something was off. If the Germans really believed Calais was the target, why were there any strong defenses at Normandy? Why hadn't Hitler stripped the area completely? Some intelligence officers warned that the Germans might be running a counter-deception, that Normandy could be a trap. But by then, it was too late to change plans. The invasion was set. The orders were given. Eisenhower made a calculated gamble: trust the deception, trust the plan, and hit Normandy with overwhelming force. And on June 6, 1944, he was proven right. The German response was confused, delayed, and fragmented. The panzers didn't arrive in time. The trap didn't spring. D-Day succeeded. But here's the question that haunts historians. What if Hitler had trusted Gehlen? What if he'd committed fully to Operation Conspiration? What if the panzers had been positioned exactly where Gehlen wanted them? The first wave of Allied troops hits Omaha Beach. They fight their way past the beach defenses. They think the Germans are in disarray. And then, from the hedgerows, from the forests, from the villages just inland, the panzers roll out. Hundreds of them. Tiger tanks, Panthers, self-propelled artillery. The slaughter would be unimaginable. Allied soldiers pinned against the sea, ships unable to provide adequate fire support, air superiority meaningless against an enemy hidden in the bocage. By nightfall, the beaches are littered with the dead. The invasion force is shattered. The Allies retreat in chaos. Churchill and Roosevelt face political collapse. Stalin, watching from the east, begins to question his faith in the Western Allies. He starts negotiating a separate peace with Germany. The war drags on for years. And here's the nightmare scenario. The Nazis have more time. More time to perfect the V-2 rocket. More time to develop jet aircraft. More time to work on the atomic bomb. And yes, they were working on it. By 1946, maybe even 1947, the war finally ends, but at a cost that makes our timeline look merciful. Millions more dead, cities obliterated, maybe even nuclear weapons used in combat. The world that emerges from that war would be darker, more fractured, more traumatized than anything we can imagine. And it all hinged on Hitler trusting one man's plan. We only know about Operation Conspiration because of a single document. In 1998, a German military historian named Klaus-Jürgen Müller was digging through declassified files in the Bundesarchiv, the German Federal Archive. He found a memo dated February 18, 1944, marked Geheime Reichssache, Secret Reich Matter. It was Gehlen's proposal, Operation Conspiration, the plan that almost changed everything. For 50 years, no one knew. For 50 years, we thought D-Day succeeded because of Allied brilliance and German incompetence. And that's partly true. But it's also true that we got lucky. World War II wasn't won by destiny. It wasn't won because good always triumphs over evil. It was won by inches, by accidents, by Hitler's paranoia, by one captured officer with the wrong documents at the right time, and by the fact that one brilliant, terrifying plan never got the chance to unfold. So the next time you see footage of D-Day, those grainy black and white images of soldiers storming the beaches, of ships on the horizon, of the liberation of Europe, remember this: we came this close to losing everything, and most people will never know.